Alright, today's video is on solving compound inequalities. So our objective is students will be able to solve compound inequalities. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and look at method 1 and method 2 of solving compound inequalities. See how they're different, how they're similar, and then come back ready to kind of discuss the two different methods. So, method 1, you should have noticed that what happened was you need to think of these inequality signs as having two different sides to the equation, or to the inequality. You can read it from this side, or you can read it from this side. So we separated them into two different sides and solved. Then we graphed our two inequalities. So method 1 requires you to separate into two inequalities. Method 2, now, is you leave them together, but you do everything twice. So when you solve an equation or you solve an inequality, anything you do to one side, you must do to the other. Since this inequality has two sides, you can think of it as solving two different times. So if you minus 5 here, you have to minus 5 from both sides. So in method 2, you do undo operations to both sides. We are primarily going to use method 1. If you want to try method 2 after we go through some of these with method 1, you can. But for the rest of the video, we're going to talk about method 1. Alright, so method 1 requires you to separate these into two equations. So the first thing I want you to do is draw a line down the middle. Okay, that's going to have us rewrite one equation here and one equation here. Now, one of the easiest things for you to do is cover up the other side of the equation and just read one of the sides. So, I'm going to use this box. You can use your hands. I want you to cover up the right-hand side. Now we just have one inequality symbol. So I'm going to rewrite that. 50 is greater than or equal to negative 10n. That is my first equation. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cover up this inequality symbol. And I'm going to rewrite. Negative 10n is greater than or equal to negative 30. Now you should see that we have two different equations, and I'm going to solve each of them separately. So I have negative 10n. How do I undo negative 10 times n? I divide by negative 10. 50 divided by negative 10 is negative 5. I divided by a negative here, so I need to flip my inequality sign. So I'm going to have a less than or equal to. These 10's cancel out, and I'm left with n. Now, in order for it to be a little bit easier for me to graph it, I'm going to rewrite it so that my n is on the left. N is greater than or equal to negative 5, so n is greater than or equal to negative 5. Now I'm going to solve my second inequality. How do I get n by itself? Well, I need to divide by negative 10. These n's cancel out. I have I divided by a negative, so I need to flip my inequality symbol. Negative 30 divided by negative 10 is positive 3. So my second is n is less than or equal to positive 3. Now I can go ahead and graph these two. I'm going to put a 0, draw 3, draw negative 5. I need to draw a closed dot on negative 5, a closed dot on negative 3. 5 is greater than, or n is greater than negative 5, so I'm going to graph to the right. N is less than negative 3, so I'm going to graph to the left, so I need to shade the middle. Now you should recognize that we're graphing an intersection. That means that this is a AND inequality. So, just to recap, all we did was we separated out the two sides. So I covered up one inequality, did this side, covered up the other inequality, rewrote that side, solved each of them, and graphed. Alright, I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try this one on your own. When you're ready, press play, and you can see it worked out. Alright, so I'm going to cover up this side. I'm going to rewrite what I have. I have negative 5 is less than a over 10. Now I'm going to do the same to the other side. Cover up this inequality. I have a over 10 is less than 0. And I'm going to go ahead and solve each of them separately. So, how do I get a alone? Well, a is being divided by 10. How do I undo that? I'm going to multiply both sides by 10. 10 times negative 5 is negative 50. I did not multiply by negatives. I'm going to keep my sign the same. These 10's cancel out, and I'm left with negative 50 is less than a. In order to make it easier to graph, I'm going to rewrite it with the a on the left. So that's going to be a is greater than negative 50. Do this one. A divided by 10. So how do I undo a divided by 10? I'm going to multiply both sides by 10. These cancel. I'm left with a. 0 times 10 is 0. I did not multiply by negative, so I'm going to keep my inequality sign. So my second inequality is a is less than 0. I'm going to go ahead and graph these two. I have a 0 and a negative 50. I need an open dot on 50, and it's greater than, so I'm going to shade this way. I need an open dot on 0. It's less than, so I'm going to show it this way. So I should shade the middle. And you should notice that this is a and inequality. Alright, let's do another example. Go ahead and pause. I'm going to do this example with you, and then I'm going to have you do another example on your own. So just like before, we need to cover up each side of our inequality, and we're going to write it twice. So I'm going to cover up the right-hand side, and I'm going to rewrite what I see. 40 is greater than or equal to 5x minus 10. And I'm going to do the other side. 5x minus 10 is greater than or equal to 80. Now I'm going to solve each side separately. Draw a line down the middle. Now this is a two-step equation, but we're going to do it just like normal. What would I get rid of first? First I need to get rid of minus 10, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. 40 plus 10 is 50, greater than or equal to 5x, because this canceled out. How do I get x alone? I'm going to divide both sides by 5. 50 divided by 5 is 10. I did not divide by negative, so I'm going to leave my sign. These 5's cancel out, and I'm left with x. To make it easier to graph, I'm going to rewrite it so x is on the left, so x is less than or equal to 10. I'm going to the other side. First thing I'm going to get rid of is minus 10, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Bring down my 5x. I have 5x is greater than or equal to 90. I need to get x alone, so I need to divide both sides by 5. So x is going to be greater than or equal to 90 divided by 5 is 18. I do not need to flip my sign because I divided by a positive 5. So my second is x is greater than or equal to 18. I'm going to go ahead and graph this. I'm going to have a 0, a 10, and an 18. I need a closed dot on 10, and it's less than, so I'm going to shade to the left. I have a closed dot on 18, and it's greater than, so I'm going to shade to the right. You should have noticed that this is an or statement because it's going in either direction. So I'm going to put or in between. And there's my solution and my graph. Alright, one more example. I want you to go ahead and pause the video, try this one on your own, and then when you're ready, press play and you can see the answer. Alright, so you should have covered up both sides of the inequality. So I'm going to go ahead and make a box for myself. I'm going to cover up the right-hand side. Rewrite what I see. I have negative 2 is greater than negative 2x minus 4. Cover up the other side. Negative 2x minus 4 is greater than negative 10. Alright, now I'm going to solve each side separately. Draw a line on my inequality. Bring down my negative 2. I need to distribute here. I need to distribute a negative 2. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. I need to get x alone, so first I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I have negative 10 is greater than negative 2x. Remember that these canceled out. I need to get x alone, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is a positive 5. I divided by a negative here, so I need to flip my inequality symbol. And these negative 2's cancel out, and I'm left with an x. Now, I need to rewrite this. It'll be a little bit easier to graph. So x is going to be greater than 5. Do this side. Draw a line on my inequality symbol. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. I need to get rid of my 8, so I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. These cancel out. I'm left with negative 2x is greater than negative 18. To get x alone, I need to divide both sides by negative 2. These 2's cancel out. I'm left with x. I divided by a negative here, so I need to flip my inequality symbol. Negative 18 divided by negative 2 is positive 9. So here are my two inequalities. I'm going to go ahead and graph them. We had a 0, a 5, and a 9. It told us that x was greater than 5. So I'm going to draw an open dot. I'm going to shade greater than. It told us that x was less than 9. So open dot, shade this way. So I need to shade the middle. This is an intersection, so you should know that this is a AND graph. Alright, there's how to solve compound inequalities. Write down any questions that you might have, and be sure to come to class ready to practice.